Water, food, and power for exactly $0 a month, running entirely off a single quarter acre. Not reduced, not subsidized through some program, genuinely $0 spent on any of those three things monthly. Most people hear that claim and roll their eyes immediately, assuming it's impossible without serious acreage. Off-grid living supposedly requires 40 acres somewhere remote, a diesel generator, and a genuinely massive mortgage. That's the fantasy utility companies and glossy homesteading magazines have quietly sold for roughly 20 years running. Believing 40 acres is required keeps people paying utility bills well into their 60s without questioning it. 1/4 acre equals 10,890 square feet of genuinely usable land space. That represents more land than most people on this entire planet will ever personally own outright. It's more than enough to run an entire household off of, provided the layout gets designed correctly. By the end of this video, a complete off-grid layout for a 1/4 acre gets covered in full. Exactly where to place rainwater catchment and exactly what size solar array actually gets needed follows clearly. That gap between spending and true necessity rarely gets calculated honestly until someone actually sits down to total it. Which crops replace grocery calories and which animals fill a freezer both get covered in real detail. How to preserve every bit of that harvest, so October's bounty still feeds a family in April matters too. Every zone gets properly measured, and every number cited throughout stays genuinely real and verifiable. Water, food, power, and storage combine into 6 systems stacking into one property paying nothing monthly. Here is what's actually happening on most small properties across the country right now, without much notice. An electric bill arrives around $180 in August simply because air conditioning ran constantly. A water bill adds another $85, with most of that going toward a lawn nobody actually eats. A recent grocery trip cracked $260 for 1 week, with half already wilting by Thursday. Add all of that together, and the numbers become genuinely staggering once properly totaled across a full year. The average American household bleeds somewhere between $1,400 and $1,800 monthly on utilities and groceries combined. That works out to close to $18,000 a year, walking straight out the door consistently. That money leaves while sitting on land that could be catching rain, generating power, and growing food constantly. A property already paid for doing double duty as a genuine utility source is hard to beat financially long term. Every single dollar of that spending goes to the same 3 industries most people wanted freedom from. The utility grid, the municipal water company, and industrial food all profit from that continued monthly dependence. Nobody actually wanted a decorative hobby. Most people genuinely wanted real independence from those exact systems. What typically gets built on a 1/4 acre instead is a pretty garden beside a house still fully plugged in. A tank filling steadily during a real storm turns an abstract rainfall statistic into something genuinely tangible. That outcome reflects neither a work ethic problem nor a genuine land size problem in any real sense. It's definitely not because anyone involved is bad at homesteading or lacks the ability to succeed here. It's fundamentally a layout problem, and layout problems have clear, repeatable, genuinely learnable solutions available. Nobody was ever taught how to arrange a 1/4 acre, so roof water fills a tank properly. That tank should feed the garden, while sunlight charges a battery that holds the harvest securely. Nobody drew that map because nobody in the utility or grocery business profits from anyone actually having it. A 1/4 acre stops functioning as a paying customer once this layout gets properly implemented and running. History rarely gets consulted before modern homesteaders attempt their very first off-grid build from scratch. That responsibility belongs to the surrounding business model, never to any individual property owner personally. None of this represents new information, since it predates modern utility infrastructure by many generations already. Before rural electrification efforts during the 1930s and 40s, nearly every American farmhouse ran on rainwater collection. Food came from the garden, meat came from the yard, and ice came from a dedicated icehouse structure. A wood stove handled everything else needed across an entire working household during that earlier era. Amish communities never abandoned that older model, they simply updated some of the tools used within it. Across Europe, older cottage gardens compressed grain, greens, herbs, chickens, bees, and a pig onto modest plots. Those same modest plots fed families through winters considerably colder than most people experience today anywhere. During World War II, over 20 million American backyard victory gardens produced roughly 40% of fresh vegetables. None of those historical households had solar panels or lithium batteries available to them at all. Modern households do have access to that exact technology now, changing what's realistically possible today. A property once treated purely as decoration eventually becomes the household's actual water, food, and power source. The underlying knowledge stays genuinely old, while the technology available today stays genuinely new and improved. Free water falling directly from the sky represents an overlooked resource on nearly every existing rooftop today. The layout functions as the bridge connecting that older knowledge with modern available technology effectively. First, rainwater catchment and bulk storage, functioning as the anchor for this entire 6-zone property layout. Without reliable water, nothing else on this entire list genuinely matters much in practical terms. Every inch of rain landing on 1,000 square feet of roof provides roughly 620 gallons. The continental United States averages about 30 inches of rainfall annually across most inhabited regions. A modest 1,200 square foot roof in an average rainfall zone delivers close to 22,000 gallons yearly. That water arrives completely free, falling directly from the sky onto an already existing roof structure. Most people currently let all of that water simply run down the driveway without collecting any of it. The actual setup stays boring in the best possible way, involving 6-inch aluminum gutters primarily. Gravity moving water without a single pump running proves elevation alone can replace an entire monthly bill. First flush diverters dump the initial 20 gallons of every storm, keeping debris out of stored water. From there, food-grade totes at 275 gallons each, or one larger bulk polytank, work well. A larger tank, running 1,500 to 2,500 gallons, gets tucked on the shaded side of the house. Physics doing work a utility company would otherwise charge for monthly is a rare kind of genuine free lunch. Running 3 totes plumbed together, plus one larger tank on a concrete pad, provides real total capacity. That combined setup provides roughly 2,375 gallons of storage for under $1,400 total. Watching those tanks fill during a genuine downpour for the first time feels almost unexpectedly exciting. 10 minutes of rainfall can add 400 gallons, covering a full week of water for a family of 4. Storing water represents one challenge, while getting it into the house without a monthly bill represents another entirely. Second, gravity-fed distribution paired with slow sand filtration, since raw rainwater isn't automatically drinking water. This zone is where basic physics does the work a utility company would otherwise charge for monthly. The layout stays genuinely simple, with main storage positioned uphill relative to the house itself. Even a 4-foot elevation gain over 30 feet moves water through standard tubing at usable pressure. From main storage, a branch line runs to a smaller header tank positioned in an attic or on a stand. That header tank provides the pressure needed for a functioning shower and sink without any pump required. A right-sized power system avoids the temptation to keep adding unnecessary capacity that never gets fully used. For genuine drinking water, a slow sand filter handles the heavy lifting through simple, proven biological filtration. A food-grade barrel filled with layered gravel and sand, topped with a biological layer, removes most contaminants. That method removes 97 to 99% of harmful pathogens according to documented research findings. International health organizations have documented slow sand filtration methods across developing regions for many decades already. Behind that filter, a gravity-fed ceramic and carbon element pair polishes remaining taste and residual concerns. One set of those filtration elements handles roughly 6,000 gallons before ever needing replacement. A full drinking water system, combining sand filtration and gravity elements, builds out for about $220. Compare that modest cost to an average water and sewer bill running roughly $1,150 annually. That comparison makes the payback period on this system genuinely embarrassing once properly calculated side by side. Every gallon of overflow from the header tank runs straight to the garden without wasting anything at all. Water alone, though, only powers a house properly once genuine electricity gets added into the equation too. Third, solar and battery power, functioning as the genuine beating heart of this entire quarter-acre property. Calories rather than flavor are what genuinely carry a household through the leanest months of winter reliably. This is exactly where most people overspend badly and go broke chasing unnecessary system capacity up front. Lithium battery chemistry lasting well over a decade changes the entire math behind an upfront solar investment. A right-sized system instead pays for itself within roughly 6 years and keeps paying for 20 more. Starting with an honest load audit matters enormously before purchasing any solar equipment whatsoever. A modest off-grid house running LED lighting, an efficient freezer, a fridge, and basic electronics draws real power. That typical daily draw runs 4 to 6 kilowatt hours, not 40 and not 60 as many assume. Most grid-tied homes waste more energy than that through phantom loads alone without anyone realizing it. Covering that realistic load reliably calls for roughly a 3 kilowatt solar array total capacity. That shift rarely happens overnight, but it consistently happens once all 6 zones get properly sequenced. That works out to about 8 modern 400-watt panels paired with a genuine battery bank. A 10 kilowatt-hour lithium battery bank paired with a 3,000-watt inverter completes that core system. A complete DIY build of that exact system currently lands between $6,500 and $9,000. That figure covers panels, batteries, inverter, charge controller, wiring, breakers, and mounting rack all combined together. The average American household electric bill runs about $145 monthly, currently nationwide. A dedicated calorie zone, planted deliberately outperforms a scattered garden, planted purely for visual appeal alone. That system pays itself off within 4 to 6 years, delivering 15 to 20 more years of free power. Modern lithium battery chemistry gets rated for around 6,000 charging cycles under normal usage conditions. That translates to over 16 years of genuine daily use before capacity meaningfully starts declining at all. Mounting panels on a south-facing ground rack instead of the roof allows easy snow removal in January. That small placement detail avoids climbing onto an icy roof during winter storms entirely for maintenance. With water and power both handled, the property still lacks reliable calories, which brings up the next zone. Fourth, the calorie core garden zone. Exactly where most homesteaders quietly fail without ever realizing it clearly. Most people plant lettuce, tomatoes, and basil, take beautiful photos, then wonder why grocery bills never budge. Salad functions as flavor and variety, but it genuinely never functions as a real food supply on its own. Calories are what actually sustain a household through winter months when nothing fresh grows outside anymore. The calorie core occupies 1,500 to 2,000 square feet planted exclusively to 4 genuine staple crops. Vertical stacking solves a space problem that horizontal spreading simply cannot solve on a small quarter acre. Potatoes, dry beans, winter squash, and grain corn make up that entire dedicated calorie-focused section. No decorative kale and no expensive heirloom pepper starts belong anywhere inside this specific calorie growing zone. A 100-foot row of properly spaced, deeply mulched potatoes yields between 150 and 200 pounds. 2 rows alone can cover an entire family's potato needs across a full calendar year, reliably. Dry beans, whether pinto, black turtle, or cranberry varieties, deliver 40 to 60 pounds per 100 square feet. Those same beans store safely in glass jars for up to 4 years without any real quality loss. A 100-foot row of potatoes covering a family's needs for a year is easy to underestimate until it's harvested. Winter squash varieties like butternut, Hubbard, or kabocha throw 40 to 60 pounds of fruit per vine reliably. That squash lasts up to 6 months in a cool pantry without needing any additional processing whatsoever. A 400 square foot squash patch alone can feed a family from October straight through March. Grain corn, dried on the cob and cracked at home, replaces store-bought cornmeal and animal feed cheaply. Rotating these 4 crop blocks yearly, side-dressed with compost from Zone 5's animals, keeps soil healthy. That rotation produces somewhere between 800 and 1,200 pounds of dense, storable calories every single year. 3 connected preservation tools working together turn a single harvest season into year-round food security. All of that comes from less than half of the total available quarter-acre space overall. That handles the carbohydrate portion of a diet, though a genuine diet requires more than carbs alone. Fifth, the vertical protein stack, addressing exactly the piece most beginners tend to badly overbuild initially. Seeing a quarter-acre often makes people imagine a dairy cow or a pig, dreaming of a small herd. Reality and the actual feed bill tend to arrive fairly quickly after those initial ambitious plans form. On a quarter-acre, protein genuinely becomes a vertical stacking problem rather than a horizontal spreading one. Stacking protein sources vertically, instead of spreading them across ground, makes far better practical sense here. On the bottom rack, a colony of red wiggler worms in a modest bin processes kitchen scraps continuously. Those worms convert scraps and garden trimmings into black castings feeding directly back into the calorie core. On the middle rack, a bank of Coturnix quail cages provides steady, reliable egg production efficiently. Coturnix quail start laying within 6 to 7 weeks, producing roughly 280 eggs per hen yearly. Watching real numbers move over 2 full years proved more convincing than any single persuasive argument could. 12 birds live comfortably inside a compact 2x4 foot cage without much difficulty at all. 3 such cages provide 36 quail total, producing roughly 10,000 eggs across a full year. 5 quail eggs roughly equal 1 standard chicken egg, worth remembering when calculating actual nutritional output. Cold birds also add to the freezer roughly every 6 months, supplementing the steady egg production nicely. On the top rack, 3-meat rabbit does paired with 1 buck round out this entire protein stack. None of this requires remote acreage, just a willingness to design an ordinary quarter acre with real intention. One doe produces roughly 40 to 60 kits yearly, under proper breeding management and care conditions. 3 does together deliver between 250 and 400 pounds of dressed rabbit meat annually. That meat comes from cheap forage, hay, and homegrown comfrey rather than expensive purchased commercial feed. Total footprint for this entire protein stack stays under 60 square feet across the whole 3-tier system. Total annual protein output, combining eggs, rabbit, and quail meat, roughly matches what a family of 4 eats yearly. All of that protein comes from one small corner, while the calorie core handles carbohydrates elsewhere nearby. Rabbit meat costing a fraction of butcher prices adds up fast once tracked honestly across a full year. Calories and protein that never get properly preserved, though amount to little more than a temporary summer surplus. Avoiding these 5 mistakes early saves years of wasted spending, compared to learning each one the hard way. Sixth, preservation and root cellar storage. The exact zone that makes this entire layout genuinely work in January. This is the zone nobody photographs for social media, and it's the one most beginners skip entirely. It represents the real difference between a homestead eating itself completely by August and one lasting through winter. The preservation station combines 3 genuinely connected pieces working together across an entire growing season. First, a pressure canner and water bath canner handle safe, shelf-stable preservation of beans, sauce, and meat. A quality canner runs around $350 new and genuinely outlives whoever originally purchases it. A committed household can realistically put up 250 to 400 jars across a single September. Second, a solar or electric dehydrator running off the same solar battery bank dries herbs and fruit cheaply. That dehydrator handles apples, squash rings, and jerky at almost no meaningful ongoing operating cost whatsoever. Third, and most critical, a small root cellar anchors this entire preservation system into place reliably. Even a modest 6 by 8 foot insulated space dug into a north-facing slope works perfectly well. A repurposed chest freezer buried at an angle in the yard offers a simpler alternative option too. A load audit costing $25 can prevent an $8,000 oversizing mistake before it happens. That space holds a steady 34 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit at roughly 90% humidity consistently. In that environment, potatoes hold 6 to 8 months, while winter squash lasts 4 to 6 months reliably. Carrots and beets packed in damp sand last nearly the entire winter without significant quality loss occurring. Garlic stores for a full year under those same stable cellar conditions without much additional effort required. This entire preservation station builds for under $900 total, including the pressure canner itself. That investment is exactly why the February grocery run simply stops happening entirely once properly established. Without preservation, the first 5 zones amount to little more than a summer party ending each October. With preservation properly in place, those same zones become a full 12-month food supply reliably. Genuine belief in any of this took real time to develop, starting instead from open skepticism initially. Walking a quarter acre for the first time made the entire idea of running everything off it seem laughable. An electric bill running $220 and a water bill running $90 felt normal then. Storing actual clean water, instead of storing problems, starts with proper gutters and a working first flush diverter. A grocery bill north of $1,100 monthly for a family of 4 rounded out that picture. Budget-cutting attempts over 2 years still failed to reveal exactly where all that money kept disappearing. The first year followed the common mistake of trying to build all 6 zones simultaneously at once. A root cellar running without electricity removes one of the largest recurring costs most households never question. A raised bed garden produced beautifully through July before essentially quitting entirely by mid-August that same year. A basic solar starter kit, 600 watts of panels, and 1 weak lead-acid battery proved genuinely inadequate. That battery couldn't even run a simple coffee maker without voltage dropping noticeably during operation. A 55-gallon rain barrel under 1 downspout got mistakenly treated as genuine water storage entirely. By October, the electric bill still sat at $210, water still ran $85. The grocery bill still landed around $1,050, despite roughly $6,000 already spent overall. That spending had barely moved the needle on any of the 3 original target expenses at all. That marked the exact point of shifting from trying to build a homestead toward building a real system instead. Sitting down with graph paper allowed every zone to get drawn in its genuinely correct, proper place. Decorative crops can always wait a full season, but calorie crops genuinely cannot wait without real consequences. Every tank, panel, bed, and rack got sized against real, honest household load data, rather than guesswork. Independence measured in a near-zero monthly bill is worth more than any single dramatic before and after photo. Building proceeded in the correct order: water first, power second, calorie core third, protein fourth, preservation last. By the end of year 2, the utility bill dropped to just $12 monthly for a legal grid connection. The water bill dropped to genuinely zero, and the grocery bill dropped under $120 monthly. Most of that remaining grocery spending simply went toward coffee rather than any genuine food necessity. That result marked the real point of becoming a genuine convert, not through persuasion, but through watching real numbers move. Now for the mistakes that wreck most people's plans, having personally made every single one of them first. First mistake: sizing solar to match an ambitious dream rather than an honest, realistic, actual household load. People commonly buy a 10 kilowatt system for what is genuinely only a 4 kilowatt hour daily life. Running an honest load audit first, using a $25 kilowatt meter for a week, prevents that waste. Doing that audit before spending $8,000 saves real money and prevents significant system oversizing entirely. Second mistake: building storage capacity before properly building genuine rainwater catchment infrastructure first correctly. Impulse buying animals without a real plan tends to create stress and expense long before it creates food. A rain barrel with no first flush diverter and no proper gutter overhaul collects dirty, unusable water. That setup essentially creates a mosquito breeding ground rather than genuinely useful stored drinking water supply. Handling the roof, gutters, and first flush diverter before buying any storage tank avoids storing actual problems. Third mistake: planting decorative crops before planting genuine calorie crops across the dedicated growing zone. Kale alone will never carry a household through winter, and neither will expensive heirloom tomato starts. Potatoes, dry beans, winter squash, and grain corn need to go into the ground first every time. Any decorative garden elements can reasonably wait until year 2, once the core system runs properly. Graph paper and honest measurements did more for this build than any single expensive piece of equipment ever did. Fourth mistake: collecting random animals impulsively instead of deliberately designing a proper vertical protein stack. Impulse buying 3 ducks, 2 goats, 6 chickens, and even a peacock in one spring rarely ends well. By August that same year, feed costs often reach $340 monthly, with genuine daily stress attached. Stacking protein vertically, and starting with quail and worms first avoids that costly, overwhelming early mistake entirely. A homestead that produces beautifully in August, but has nothing left by November, never really finished the job. Mastering one system fully before adding the next prevents the chaos that impulsive animal collecting typically creates. Fifth mistake, leaving out the preservation station entirely, assuming growing alone covers an entire household's needs. Every homestead attempt that quit within 3 years typically produced beautifully in August with nothing left by November. Anything grown but never properly stored effectively just gets borrowed temporarily from the eventual compost heap instead. Building the preservation station during year 1 prevents that exact common, entirely avoidable failure pattern from occurring. Picture a quarter acre exactly like this one, 18 months after this entire 6-zone system gets built. Walking out the back door in February reveals storage tanks on the north wall sitting 3/4 full. That fullness comes from recent rainfall collected automatically without any manual intervention required at all. Solar panels on the south rack throw 3 kilowatts steadily into the battery bank throughout daylight hours. The inverter quietly runs the freezer, fridge, lights, and a laptop without a single wire touching any utility grid. Walking past the dormant calorie core, covered under last year's straw mulch, leads toward the root cellar door. Inside that cellar sit 180 pounds of firm potatoes, alongside 40 pounds of winter squash neatly stored. A functionally 0 monthly bill is the real measurable proof that this entire 6-zone system genuinely works. Jars of tomato sauce, chicken stock, dry beans, and pickled quail eggs line the shelves in orderly rows. The protein stack hums quietly along the fence line, producing eggs daily alongside rabbit meat in the freezer. Heading back inside reveals no electric bill sitting on the counter, and no water bill either that month. No grocery receipt for $260 appears anywhere among the regular monthly household paperwork. Combined monthly food and utility spending sits comfortably under $80 total, mostly coffee, salt, and flour. That isn't merely reduced spending, and it isn't simply lower than before, that represents functionally 0 monthly cost. The same quarter acre it always was becomes the entire reason that outcome became genuinely possible at all. So here is a genuine question worth sitting with. Which of these 6 zones would get built first? Water, power, the calorie core, the protein stack, preservation, or gravity distribution all deserve real consideration here. Drop that answer in the comments below, since every single one gets read and genuinely considered afterward. If this changed how a quarter acre gets looked at, hitting subscribe brings new breakdowns like this weekly. A quarter acre genuinely is enough. The layout was always the only thing that ever needed to change.